Anthropic withheld their most powerful model from the public and said it was too dangerous to release.
Anthropic's Mythos can link up small vulnerabilities among millions of lines of code, turning unseen gaps into massive exposures.
That's never happened before, not from any major AI lab. I spent 2 weeks digging into the technical reports, the UK government's independent evaluation, and the pushback from CISOs and researchers who think the panic is getting ahead of the evidence. There's one specific number that should stop every security professional, and there's also a playbook running in parallel that's worth knowing how to identify. I'm going to show you both. Hi nerds, I'm Addie LaMarr. I spent 15 years in cybersecurity, and I teach you about cyber threats before they blindside you. Today we're going to determine whether this Mythos announcement is actually the emergency people online are claiming it is. Let's get into it. So why won't they ship it? Anthropic's Claude Mythos preview is a distinct new model tier, and they've decided not to release it publicly, citing its offensive cybersecurity potential. Alongside it, they launched Project Glasswing, which is an invite-only access to roughly 40 organizations like Amazon, Cisco, CrowdStrike, JP Morgan, Microsoft, Palo Alto Networks, and the Linux Foundation. The stated premise is that defenders get access to Mythos before models with comparable capability reach the open market. Anthropic committed $100 million in usage credits and $4 million in direct donations to open source security organizations. Their logic is to give the defenders a head start. But before we get into whether that logic actually holds up, there's one number that explains why Anthropic made this call in the first place. And it's the cleanest capability cliff I've ever seen in AI. The jump nobody expected. Here's the data point that separates this announcement from standard AI capability discourse. On exploit development, or the ability to take a discovered vulnerability and turn it into a working deployable attack, Opus 4.6, Anthropic's previous flagship, scored approximately 0%. However, Mythos scored 72.4%. That gap is a pretty massive jump. And here's a few examples of what Mythos found specifically. A 27-year-old vulnerability in OpenBSD, which is one of the most security-hardened operating systems in existence. Then they found a 16-year-old flaw in FFmpeg that survived 5 million automated security tests. After that, they found a browser exploit that chained 4 separate vulnerabilities to escape both the renderer sandbox and the OS sandbox. This means Linux kernel privilege escalation to full machine control. Every finding came with a working proof of concept. Now, if this was only coming from Anthropic's marketing team, I'd be skeptical of every one of those numbers. So let's look at what happened when an actual government agency ran their own independent test. Then the UK government ran its own test. Anthropic's claims would be easier to dismiss as vendor marketing if the UK AI Safety Institute hadn't published their own findings. AISI confirmed 73% success on expert-level capture-the-flag tasks. They confirmed that Claude Mythos became the first AI model to complete a 32-step simulated enterprise network attack. Prior models scored 0 on that range. Mythos completed it on 3 of 10 attempts. Yes, 3 of 10. AISI described the attack chaining capability, which is finding a vulnerability, identifying adjacent weaknesses, and sequencing a multi-step exploit, as unprecedented among tested models. Attack chaining is what expert human hackers actually do. A single CVE rarely ends a campaign. Getting from initial access to objective requires understanding how one vulnerability enables the next. Mythos executes that reasoning at machine speed, and that assessment came straight from the UK government, independently. So the evidence holds up, but this is also where the coverage starts going sideways, and there are 3 specific things most of the headlines are getting wrong. Where people are getting this wrong, the government response is real. The exploit development rate is also real. Here's what the coverage is getting wrong. 1. The remediation problem isn't new. David Lindner is the CISO at Contrast Security with 25 years in the field. His response to the Mythos announcement was this: "We've never had a problem finding vulnerabilities. We find them every day. We actually have a pile of them we just don't fix." Over 45% of discovered vulnerabilities in large organizations remain unpatched after 12 months. Mythos finding more bugs faster makes an existing crisis worse, but a crisis that accelerates is a specific problem. different from the claim that AI is now automating enterprise compromise at scale. 2. The autonomous framing is probably overstated. Heidi Klaff at the AI Now Institute flagged that Anthropic never disclosed false positive rates, never disclosed how much expert human review was required for the autonomous findings, and also never compared Mythos against existing specialized security tooling, much of which already performs well on CVE discovery anyways. Pointing Mythos at a live enterprise network and saying hack it likely requires significant expert operationalization on the other end. 3. Some featured examples may not be Mythos exclusive. Researcher Stanislav Fort tested Anthropic's highlighted vulnerability, which was the free BSD example, against 8 existing models. All 8 found it, including a 3.6 billion parameter model costing 11 cents per million tokens. If the benchmark examples aren't exclusive to Mythos, the capability floor across the industry is already higher than this announcement implies. And once you notice that, you start to notice something else about the timing of this whole thing that completely changes how you read it. The IPO nobody's talking about. Both Anthropic and OpenAI are expected to go public by the end of 2026. Too dangerous to release is, from a pure brand positioning standpoint, a remarkable move. Google did the same thing earlier last month with their post-quantum announcement. This kind of move ushers in mystique, capability signaling, safety credibility, and regulatory goodwill from a single decision. Former White House AI advisor David Sachs called it regulatory capture via doomsday framing. In totally unrelated news, Anthropic also just experienced Claude Code's source code getting leaked by insiders. Their APIs had an outage, and someone found 3 shell injection bugs in Claude Code CLI after Anthropic accidentally shipped the full source map in the NPM package. The danger is actually there. The 72.4% and the AISI confirmed attack chaining are real. Anthropic also has a significant financial incentive to have its most dangerous model be perceived as uniquely, singularly dangerous, and that incentive arrived at a very convenient time. Both of these things are true at the same time. And when you hold both of them at once, the actual emergency starts to come into focus. And it's something the headlines are missing entirely. The gap was already there. Here's the emergency worth your operational attention. The security industry had a discovery to remediation ratio problem before this week. Defenders were already failing to patch what they found. The discovery rate is about to accelerate dramatically. The remediation rate is not. Project Glasswing gives 40 organizations a 6 to 12 month head start on using Mythos defensively. That's real, and it's definitely bounded. 40 organizations getting an advantage doesn't address the underlying structural problem. Most organizations don't have the security engineering capacity to act on what they find, regardless of how it was found, and also most of the cybersecurity frameworks were built from a time before AI. So the question for security leadership isn't whether AI can now find vulnerabilities faster. They obviously can. The question is what your organization's remediation velocity actually looks like, and whether it's within the same order of magnitude as your discovery rate. If the answer is no, Mythos just accelerated the visibility of a structural failure that was already there long before this announcement. So here's how to actually think about all of this without getting swept up in it. The 72.4% exploit development rate is independently confirmed. Attack chaining was verified by AISI and not Anthropic's marketing team. Treasury convened Wall Street to discuss precautions. So the evidence holds up. Anthropic also has a $40 billion valuation and an IPO on the horizon. Smaller models may already do more of this than the current coverage acknowledges. The job is to know the difference. If you like this video about Mythos, you'll love this one about the new Google post-quantum cryptography announcement. I'll see you in that video next.